Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Ukraine is facing one of its most serious credibility tests since the start of the war. A $100 million corruption scandal has erupted at Energoatom, the state nuclear power company, leading to the suspension of Justice Minister Herman Halushchenko and sparking a public outrage. With figures close to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy reportedly implicated, Western allies are watching closely. Meanwhile, Moscow is floating a new so-called peace proposal, quickly dismissed by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio as Russia doubles down militarily and diplomatically. To explore this, we are joined by Mark Toth, co-founder Intrep 360. Mark, welcome back. Great to see you.
Ashim, great to be back. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start with this corruption scandal. I think it's been fairly well publicized. In terms of what this means for Ukraine internally, politically at the moment, and socially, how do you see it?
Ashim, it's shocking to Ukrainians because they need to have faith in their government. I do a weekly TV show in Ukraine alongside my partner, Colonel John Sweet. And this was certainly a topic that's come up on that show in terms of how this will impact Ukrainians. That said, I think, look, Ukraine has a lot to be proud of here because in the past, this kind of corruption likely would have been swept under the rug. Earlier, there were efforts last July to weaken these organizations, NABU and SAPO, the two organizations that have brought these charges, these allegations, if you will, against these energy officials and businessmen. But they weren't silenced. The Ukrainians went to the streets saying, we want transparency in our country. We want to be responsible. We want to be like any other potential EU member, being ethical and cooperative. So I think while this is devastating, especially when you consider the victims of all of this, the people that should have been protected by Russian missile attacks at these, siphoning off of funds that didn't prevent, is tragic. But on the plus side, it shows Ukrainians want a better way forward. They want a Western way forward, not a Russian way forward.
Understood. Now, as we're hearing, as we receive more and more information, we see that actually the corruption goes pretty high up around the president. Are people blaming President Zelenskyy, or is he kind of separated in the eyes of the people from this corruption?
Yeah, at this point, it's a wait-and-see answer approach to that, Ashim. Zelenskyy has denied any involvement. He's certainly called for all due speed and haste for charges to be brought if they're warranted. And I think we have to let that play out. And I think that the people in Ukraine are willing to do that at this point. They haven't lost sight that Putin's trying to weaponize winter. He's going after these nuclear facilities, these energy facilities, all the thermal plants were just down last week, and that they've got bigger fish to fry than just this. They don't need a change in leadership at this point. That said, I don't want to lessen the importance of this because it does touch close to Zelenskyy. One of the alleged culprits here is a man by the name of Timur Mindich, who had been a co-owner of Zelenskyy's own TV production company. Now, Zelenskyy had divested of that prior to taking the presidency, but still, when you reach someone that close to the president, this is unprecedented. In Ukraine, and it's troubling. So certainly Zelenskyy needs to be seen taking the lead here. Hopefully that's enough because, look, there are significant battles happening in Kupiansk and the Pokrovsk region, et cetera, and we simply don't have time for this. But don't get me wrong, it's something that has to be addressed, and we're going to have to make the time for it. But I think Ukrainians see the bigger picture here, that there's still a very real kinetic war going on and that a lot of people still continue to die on these battlefronts.
Understood. Now we are aware, of course, that the anti-corruption agencies are continuing their work and looking for, and they expect to find, more corruption at various levels. In this kind of atmosphere, how do you think, if at all, Ukraine's EU accession chances are affected?
Look, I think the devil will be in the details of how they respond. I mean, as the EU spokesman told your own network, TVP World, that, look, this proves to us that at least the apparatus is in place in terms of NABU and SAPO, the investigative agencies, and that it's working, that it uncovered this. I mean, this was the result of 15 months of investigations. It just came to light because of the 70 raids that they did. And so from a procedural standpoint, everything that needs to be happening, if this were happening anywhere else in the EU, is happening. It's come to light. It's not been able to be swept under the rug. So from that standpoint, I hope that it doesn't pause the EU accession point, because it's too critical for Ukraine. It's critical for Europe's collective defense for Ukraine to become part of the EU. So I hope that it doesn't happen. If anything, and God forbid this is a terrible price because of the human price involved here, the lack of protection that could have otherwise been afforded. I hope this reassures the EU that, look, Ukraine wants to do everything possible to make sure that they're adhering to European Union ethical and business standards.
Understood. Now, moving on to Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was approached by Lavrov with some foundations for discussions for peace, and these were brushed off by Marco Rubio. What can you tell us about that conversation?
Yeah, no, Rubio was right to brush this off. Putin is, and Hashim, you and I have talked about this many times on TVP World, that Putin attempts to win at the negotiating table what he cannot win on the battlefield. And this is just another example of it. For me, what's more interesting in these discussions is not so much the U.S. reaction to them. Grateful as I am, I'm glad that Rubio basically said no. It's really what's behind the Russians coming to this, because they're trying to make a lot. If we look at the theatrics here, they're trying to make a lot about these potential wins in Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, is why Ukraine should settle and basically capitulate. But the real reason for me is I start to look at this, and I want to credit a woman by the name of Diane Francis for putting this together. Russia is in deep, deep economic trouble. I mean, their oil revenues are down 27%. Its national welfare fund was $100 billion at the start of the war. It's down to $30 billion. They're facing with that $300 billion frozen assets that the EU controls. Their weapon costs, just trying to build the armaments and munitions for this war, are up 30 to 80%. Their VA taxes are 22%. Their inflation rate is sky high. And they're so desperate for cash right now. There's reports out there that they are trying to sell or to get China to pay way in advance for liquefied gas purchases at deep discounts. So behind their bluster, behind Lavrov and Peskov's statements as well, Putin's spokesman's saying otherwise, Hashim, I really think what we're seeing here is desperation from Putin, saying he realizes that his economy can't continue to sustain this war and his army isn't going to get him where he wants to be. So I think that's why we're seeing the overtures. But at the end of the day, this is where it gets a little bit kabuki theater. I still don't think Putin is going to stop. He's not going to let these realities get in his way, but he's trying to find at least a pause, if not some slight off-ramps for a time. But he's going to keep coming back. He's made it clear he wants Odesa. He wants to control the Black Sea area, and that's not going to go away no matter what they may talk about in peace. For me, peace coming out of the words of Lavrov or Dmitriev, or Peskov, basically is akin to using the same word, capitulation. Just not realistic. Ukraine isn't going to accept it.
Well, as you say, Mark, they're still going for the maximalist demands and are not prepared to give way on anything. We shall see how that progresses. Mark, as always, a great pleasure seeing you again. Thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening.
Great. Always my honor, Hashim.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. But don't go away. As always, lots more coming up. Goodbye.